feelings of helplessness and financial gloom brought on by the consequences of the pandemic and the lockdown could be just what is preventing you from digging yourself out of the hole. The current crisis you find yourself in is unique. There are far-reaching impacts. But how do we build up resilience with all of the negative news? Bryan Hattingh is the founder of Cycan Leadership. You might have some suggestions. Bryan, good evening to you. It's been such a tough time, frankly. How do we still face the future with a sense of hope after everything that's happened in 2020?
That's a great question, Stephen, and thank you for the opportunity to be on the show. You know, in and through this time, people have had to deal with a tsunami of content, and most of it has been negative, if not almost all of it, and a large portion of it has been untrue or not factual. And the challenge is that we can't influence or control the content. What we can do is manage the context, which is the inner place from whence we receive that content and what we do with it. And, you know, what's happened to people, of course, is that it's not just one silo. It's across a number of areas of their lives. They've been put into lockdown. They've no longer going into the office. They've no longer got community of work associates. They put into very stressful circumstances, and fear and anxiety ride heavily on the back of that. And that one isn't good for us on any level, emotionally, psychologically, and even at an immune system level. And what's so important to know is that hope is not just a feel-good emotion. It's a cognitive mechanism that's inspirational that we can work to develop and to build. And a lot of it comes down to what are we thinking, what are we listening to, what are we saying, and what are we doing with that inner person? Because what's really important is that we can lose our way very easily because our minds can't determine the difference between what's imagined and what's real. And so often in these situations, our thoughts and fears run away with us, and we end up in a state of inertia and moving into a fight or flight mode, which is not the best use of our brain or our minds.
Bryan, I wonder, there's this old phrase in English, paralyzed by grief, right? Now, in this case, I wonder if some people are feeling grief without actually knowing it. So if someone dies or passes away, you know that you're feeling grief. You understand that. In this case, the life that we had has been taken from us. The plans that we had for 2020 have gone. The marriage is no longer going to happen because you're not allowed to have many people. Or, you know, is there a way in which we're feeling grief without realizing it?
I think very definitely so. You know, if you think of grief being, I know the dictionary will say to you that it refers specifically to an emotion felt when there's a death. But quite frankly, I think grief can relate to any form of loss. And so the losses that we've suffered can be material, financial, they can be emotional, they can be on so many levels, and we don't recognize or describe it as grief, and yet those feelings are very definitely resident and all add to the impact upon ourselves. And what I think can often happen in these times is people can get into losing the habit of exercise, not eating properly. You know, comfort eating is a big thing in these times, and it's we can all fall into that trap. And we're not sleeping well. I think so many people are suffering with insomnia or disrupted sleep. And these are three key baseline states that we need to manage because, firstly, we can, and secondly, they will ensure a certain level of health and well-being. You know, exercise, whether you enjoy it or not, is going to deliver dopamine. And dopamine's a really important chemical in your whole feel-good and your whole wherewithal as a person.